Good evening and welcome to the Politicket Podcast. Tonight we have Jon Harvey with us. Jon is the host of the Modern Conservative Podcast. Thanks for coming on, Jon.
Thanks for having me, Jon.
Well, you know, the other night, of course, you had a fairly new guy as far as politics concerned. Trevor Lee was on your podcast, and he made a statement, kind of a slur, some
Right.
people call it,
Right.
on your show. And then, then it's in the Salt Lake Tribune, right? Brian Schott wrote an article about it. And then there was a podcast the other night on KSL where the person that he beat in the convention went on KSL to talk about, how bad that slur was. And what was your feeling along the whole thing?
Personally, I think it was a hack job. That's just my personal take. Trevor Lee did beat Handy in the convention, and but when Trevor made the comment, the T word, certain people come out of the woodworks, and one of those was Handy, and he's actually irrelevant because he was basically, as far as I'm concerned, done in politics in the state of Utah, at least this term. Just think,
talking about that, what I found amazing was kind of his response.
Yeah.
After this offensive slur, right? And it's funny how we, a slur on one side doesn't evoke the same emotion.
And you're right. It's kind of like using, in my culture, using the N word.
Right.
One time it could be derogatory, but given who says it, it could be an affection.
Right.
So.
Well, here's what Handy said. Let's listen to this.
Okay.
It smacks of not only the transphobia things, but a little bit of racism maybe in there, and it comes off to me as almost white supremacy.
Now that was interesting. Of course, your podcast isn't on video, right?
Right.
And so to say that was racist or white supremacist, and actually, as they were talking on this podcast, it made it sound like that's what your podcast was, right?
White supremacy. That's what. From listening to him, he made it seem as if that was who I was on the podcast, and that is why Trevor Lee was up there, because he's part of the racist facade. Well, Trevor's not a racist, nor am I, because if you don't know me, I'm an African American. Excuse me, I am black.
Yeah, that's what I find kind of amusing in some ways of calling your podcast racist, white supremacist. They throw out these terms, and aren't these terms offensive as well?
Well, they're absolutely offensive. As a matter of fact, I did a rebuttal show and explaining how ticked off I was, and how offended I was as well, because I've learned one thing about the Democrats. They'll call anybody a racist. And he was using that tactic that the Democrats use. You go on to a moderate to liberal station, you get up there, and you push the racist, bigotry, xenophobe, homophobe, transgenderphobic narrative now. But the problem was it was a Republican doing it. It wasn't a Democrat, it was a Republican. One of us, supposedly. Now, not everybody's Republican is truly a Republican. At least of all, they're not a conservative. But that being said,
but that's beside the point, right? Because for one, this was a slur that Trevor used, right? And they say, well, that's not racist. It's not white supremacist, right? Because he was talking about someone in the transgender community.
And what's funny, we weren't even talking about race. We're talking about transgender. If anything, that he could have used the word bigotry, but he specifically used the word racist.
And that's a typical, just like you're saying, that's a response that happens a lot, because you have a conservative view on certain things. Mm-hmm. That's a tactic.
Well, that tactic is to trigger emotion. when you use racism, you're trying to trigger emotion. Basically, what you're trying to do is trigger people with their emotions to say Trevor and Jon Harvey are racist, and we don't know what we talk about. Our conservatism is not valued because, you know, we are racist. Well, what Handy didn't know, obviously, that I'm truly a black man. I'm just as black as night.
We have a video. You know, our podcast is on video, so by the end, people will actually learn that about you, right?
I mean, even my dialect sometimes you can tell I'm a black man unless you've never been around a black man before, man calling black man racist.
Yeah, it seems odd to me.
It's absolutely odd.
But you know what? It is. Republicans like to fight each other.
It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. Here's one thing about the Democrats, John. They can come up with the most ludicrous bill, and every dang one of them will stand in line to vote for it. But the Republicans on the other side, we're going to fight each other. Instead of fighting the counterparts, we're going to fight each other because they think fighting each other makes them look more conservative. Because they say, well, he's stomping on his own people. Well, that doesn't make you more conservative. That makes you a loser. And this is why Republicans have been losing for years, because they will not stand up. And sometimes you might get a little bit of blood on your collar. Not literally, but that's what it takes sometimes. That's why they call it a fight, good versus evil. You have to take a side. When the good men do nothing, evil will rise. The Democrats have been rising for many, many years now, especially 2022, with all the crazy things they're doing right now, and there's nobody to stop them. So Republicans have got to learn, you know, we are a team. You're not always going to get along. You're not always going to agree. But damn it, stop stepping on each other.
Yeah, you know, I did notice going to the convention this year, the delegates seem to be very conservative, right? Which is actually what we've had for quite a while in the Republican Party. But what do you think were the major issues that drove so many new people? Because when we did a poll at the state convention, over 50% of the people, that was the first time they'd been to a state convention. What brought those people out, and why does a newcomer like Trevor Lee beat a long-term incumbent?
But because people are truly waking up. First of all, we had a tough 2 years. The last 2 years have been pure hell for most of us. And then, you know, when you start playing with people's lives and their money, they're going to point their fingers at the one in power at that time. And so people said, you know, I'm done. I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not getting vaccinated. You know, I'm not falling for this racism game anymore. You know, you got CRT, SEL, all these things that are designed to divide us. Oh, well, the newest one now is the Supreme Court Justice League.
Right.
That's the new one now. Because when people say, well, how does that divide? Well, you got the pro-life and the pro-choice. That's another tug and pull situation that's going to erupt in the country. Everything that we're going through right now has been bestowed by the Democrat Party. But furthermore, people are also tired of weak Republicans. We're tired of weak Republicans. You think if Republicans were doing what they're supposed to be doing, guys like Trevor would have won handily if Handy was doing his job, no pun intended. But if he was doing his job, you know, he wouldn't have this problem with Trevor Lee. Another thing is simply this. I tell politicians all the time, when you work for the people and you do your job, your reelection will be the easiest one you ever had. But politicians don't believe that. They rather deal to the party more so than the constituents. And this is when the constituents are now, we're tired of it, and we're showing that, such as with Trevor Lee and some others around the state.
So you think there was really an anti-incumbent fever, so to speak, this time around?
Well, somewhat, but you know, your record speaks for itself as well. If you got a long-term record and it's not really constituent friendly, eventually people will start waking people up. And when people wake up and see what's really going on, you kind of have this reaction. Now, here's the thing. Handy said that he said on that interview with KSL that the delegates don't really represent the people of Utah. They're just a bunch of radicals who voting for people like, you know, Trevor Lee, for example. Well, you know, if that's the case, Jason Preston lost to John Curtis, who a lot of us think is a rhino. You know, so
if they were really that radical, they would have put in.
Yeah, they would have put in Jason. You know, so that point has been splattered. So, but they're voting for people, looking for people that they think in some of these districts that will work for their people, work for their constituents. And that's what this is all about. It's not about the politician. He's truly the pawn in the game. It shouldn't be the voters and the constituents. We should be able to push him where we want and have him do what we want because he represents us. Now, I don't make it, you know, I'm using the word pawn as figuratively, but that's who he's supposed to work for. He's supposed to be working for us. So this is why so many people this year are, you know, we're just tired of it. I mean, they say it's going to be a red wave, but I can promise you this, the Democrats are not going to make it that easy.
Yeah. Well, we're talking to Jon Harvey. We're going to take a break here.
My name is Marlo Oakes, and I am the state treasurer for Utah. And it is a pleasure to speak to you. I am excited about the opportunity that we have to work together on a very important issue that affects all Americans, and that is ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And I need you to spend time getting up to speed on this issue because it affects not just your money, but it also affects our constitutional form of government. How do we deal with differences among ourselves? We have a process in place. We have the legislative process. We also have the public square. ESG will affect both of those things very dramatically. And I need your help. I can't do this alone. We need to work together as Americans to come together, put down our differences, and fight this, which is a power that tries to overthrow really our form of government and our economic system. Thank you for your support. Marlo Oakes, State Treasurer of Utah.
We're back with Jon Harvey from the new conservative podcast, modern conservative podcast.
The Races Network.
Yeah, I mean, that is an odd thing, right? But it's a typical attack, right? What we want to do is we want to paint people as being out of the norm, right?
Right.
But in my mind, this Overton windows shifted so far to the left, Ronald Reagan would be a right-wing radical Republican today.
You know, it amazes me, even when I hear Republicans talk about how, you know, the far right. How far right do you have to go to have freedom? Hey, look, I'll go all the way to the right if I have to protect the Constitution and the things I believe and my children. Call me white supremacist? Wrong. But what I am is a black conservative. If you want to call us far right, call us far right. But as long as at the end of the day, we get to live according to our Constitution, and you protect people such as myself and Trevor from people trying to smear us just because they have a personal agenda, which is only happens mostly
or because they have opinions that differ from yours.
Or
right?
That too. Unfortunately, his opinion this time is wrong because I'm not a racist. You know, his opinion, because you have opinion, does not make it true. And this time, his opinion is absolutely wrong. I'm not a racist. Trevor's not a racist. If I was a racist, here's a question for you. If I was a racist, look at my November 30th, listen to my November 30th podcast. When I spoke up for transgenders, homosexuals, what you name it, anything different from us, it's their right to be that. I stand for that. But what I don't stand for, and this is where they lost in the message, John, our conversation was about transgender. Transgender boys playing with transgender, or playing with girls, biologically girls. That was the conversation. Trevor said the word, the tranny word. Now, I didn't know
that probably wasn't very wise.
Well, here's the thing, though. But the thing is, neither he or I knew that this all of a sudden became a word of bigotry. You know, it was never expounded to me, and he admitted in a later conversation he never knew that either, because everything changes in this damn country so frequently There's no consistency anymore.
But it's okay. It's a little bit hypocritical, I think, to complain about that and then turn around and call you, Jon Harvey, and your podcast racist, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, he encumbered everything in the conversation on that podcast basically as racist. When he said, if you listen to the entire podcast, it sounds somewhat white supremacist. And that's what he said to KSL. Now, I simply say this. If we're going to start playing on words nowadays, well, people should look up the word picnic. Look up the word picnic and see what it means when it comes to slavery in the United States in the late 1800s. Look up the word picnic, because white people should not be using that word around blacks to know their history. Because it's not a word of complete endearment.
Right.
So what do we do now? Do we go out and chastise everybody to go have a picnic nowadays?
Well, no, because Jon, you don't do that.
Exactly.
Because you're a conservative.
Exactly.
Right? And that's not your game. You don't try to divide people.
I don't use yesterday's history to fight today's war. Where what the Democrats do, they'll take today's war and keep it current.
So why are you a conservative?
Because I believe in the Constitution. I love the First Amendment. I love the Second Amendment. I love the Fourth. I love the Ninth. I love the 10th. And I wish we used the 25th. Because right now the 25th should be used on Joe Biden. But that's the problem with the Republicans that I have. They won't even bring up the 25th Amendment. Now, yes, Kamala Harris has to go along with it, which is not going to happen.
Right.
I get that. But damn it, show something. You know you lose the battle. Do what you've always been doing. You say you're going to do things, then you never do it. Well, you know what? Start the process. Just start the process. Wait till the next election. Let Trump come in, or DeSantis, or whoever's running. Let them help carry this out. Let Pence come back in and say, hey, look, he's got to go.
So do you think we're going to have a red wave?
I mean, conservative side says yes. My hopeful side says yes. But given that the Democrats are not doing a lot right now to brighten their brand, it's almost like they know something that we don't know. And that's what I worry about. And I've had this conversation with other politicians and friends and people who are in the market as well, the political market as well. We don't know why the Democrats are not doing what they normally do. In actuality, in Handy's case, he's doing what the Democrat usually do for them. So what is are the Republicans now going to turn out to be Democrats or liberals or moderates? Or are they going to say, you know what, we don't like the red wave because that gives the red wave too much power?
Yeah, another thing that Representative Handy said was that, next time around, he, if he'd have thought better, he would have gathered signatures.
Oops, it's too late.
So the thing is, though, isn't that kind of an insult now to the whole caucus convention?
The delegates?
And those delegates that
it would be. It would be because, look, I'm going to speculate that he was counting on the fact that name recognition would outweigh Trevor. That's what he was counting on. But what he wasn't counting on, that a lot of the people in the state of Utah see what's going on.
It's interesting. Daniel Thatcher voted against the transgender sports bill. And in fact, he gave quite an impassioned speech on the floor, but yet he got over 60% of the delegates.
I don't understand that.
Well, I understand it because he worked really hard to do that. He talked to every delegate many times. He counted the votes that he had beforehand. And so that tells me that, if you work really hard with the delegates and you get your point across and you get your message out there, especially since a lot of these delegates are new, that you can win.
Well, but here's the key point with Daniel. Here's the key point with him. As long as people don't know the dirt that you've done, you can get away with a lot of crap. It won't work with me. it won't work with you. But if a delegate doesn't know the record of that particular candidate, like, for example, I'm not even gonna mention his name.
Well, his delegates were, I would say, fairly conservative, but I think he was more effective at getting his message out, and that tells me that someone like Handy could have won too.
Well, it just depends.
Right?
On...
It's not and why would you go back and insult the people, right? And then to bring up this whole idea that you're white supremacist, you're racist, and basically, try to cancel somebody that's new to politics.
Well, because you gotta think about this though. When he got beat, he never thought he was going to come back into the light in the manner which he did. So basically, since Trevor was the one that put him out of commission, and Trevor said what he had said, KS figured out, hey, let's just reach out to the guy that Trevor just annihilated. And this is what triggered Handy, and he had no time for prep for anything.
Right.
I mean, basically what you did was you caught him with his pants down. Let's be honest with you. Because had he had time for somebody to prep him, he would have never said the things he would have said. And they would have checked out to see who the Modern Conservative podcast was as well.
Yeah. Because
that isn't something that, on my podcast, I show this every time I speak of this man. You're walking around this state, you're on national, well, I should say a local TV radio station, calling somebody a racist. But his problem was, it won't work because I'm black.
So was that offensive to you?
It's absolutely offensive. It should be offensive to Trevor as well. I haven't heard anything from him. I've got the news reaching out to me. I got K-Talk reaching out to me. I got these shots reached out to me. I don't do no interview for these people because all they're going to do is twist it. Now, I'm not like Trevor. He has to protect his brand more so than I do. My brand is pushing you to the limit. My brand is I'm going to call you out on your crap. And that's what I did with Handy. And I did it not for Trevor. The man doesn't need any protecting. His, who he is stands alone by itself. I did it because when you got a grown man calling a white man, calling a black man a racist, why should I let that lie? Why should I let that lie? That's a Democrat trip. Republicans let that lie. Jon Harvey, the Modern Conservative podcaster, does not. I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to take it. So that's my point on Handy. I have no respect for the man, and I say that publicly. When you do what you did as a white man and you try to goat the voters against Trevor, but you use my podcast for his own personal gain, I have a problem with that. He doesn't get my endorsement. Trevor gets my endorsement 100%. Handy will never get respect from me. Never.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking about that.
Don't edit this either, so I'll let people see it.
Okay. Well, I try to let people say what they want to say. I don't goad people into
You're right.
saying things that I want to say. But, I thought it was an important conversation. And, I talked to you earlier on the phone about what had gone on. And after I listened to that KSL podcast, I just thought, this is going too far. It's very hypocritical to get after someone for saying inappropriate things, and then you say inappropriate things to further push those people away and try to cancel them.
But before we go, people miss one other point. Handy did the exact same thing to me that they said Trevor was doing to the transgenders.
Right.
And he done it to Trevor as well. So what makes him any better than anybody else? What makes him an authority that KSL need to call him on race relations? Because he's just proven he's not good at it.
Yeah.
He's not good at it. And it's like the pot calling the kettle black. So, you know, in the long run, it's Republicans got to get better about being Republicans. Look, there are some great Republicans, and you're one of them.
Yeah, we really can't fight each other.
You can't.
Right? Because the things we agree on are much bigger than the things we don't.
Amen, brother.
Right?
Amen.
And so we need to find our points of parity with each other and try to come to some agreement on at least a group of things, right? But, you know, the reason why I really believe in the caucus convention system is because I think delegates have bought into the platform of the Utah Republican Party, and they try to vet candidates based on that.
They're more informed about politics. A lot of the delegates are more informed, right? Because they're not people that you walk up to Walmart and give them a card and say, "Hey, be a delegate." That's not how it works. I mean, there is a little bit of vetting when it comes to people asking people to be delegates. So, you know, and another thing is that the GOP, you know, we just got to stop this infighting. It's just absolutely ridiculous. It gets us absolutely nowhere. You mentioned the red wave. You know what my fear is that we get the red wave? We lose it in 2 years.
Yeah.
We lose it in 2 years because Republicans cannot unite and be as strong as the Democrats. That's my fear.
Well, and these people seem to get to Washington and don't really follow those parts of the platform that are important to us.
I mean, we had a popular...
This runaway spending, for instance.
Oh, Lord.
Who stops that?
Well, here's my question, John. Why are we sending so much money to Ukraine? Now, look, I get the Ukraine situation, but here's a question. We're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, but who's spending the money? They're not building infrastructure right now. They're not buying a lot of armament because it's given to them. Now, will they pay back at a later date? Yes. But then if that's the case, then why give them money? Just say, hey, look, just pay us back. What, you going to just give our own money back? So my question is, there's a lot of money leaving this country.
Yeah.
And nobody's asking, where's it going? Who's using it? How are they using it? They're not building buildings. They're not building bridges. So where did the money go in?
You know, that'd be an interesting topic for a future podcast. We ought to sit down and talk about that.
Let me know.
I think those are really, I think they're important ideas. I appreciate you and your leadership in the state, both with your podcast, with the Blexit organization, the things that you're doing there. I know your group is getting a lot of credibility in the state. And, you know, here's the other thing, Jon. You are over the target, and that makes a lot of people nervous.
Sweat, please.
Yeah.
Keep sweating because
Yeah.
I'm not leaving.
Good for you.
I'm not leaving.
Well, I appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Yes, sir.